Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Will Marm. I'm a Special Forces veteran and a graduate of the Bancroft Capital Veteran Training Program. Welcome to this quarter's Patriot Lunch, featuring Commander Dan Bailey, a soon-to-be retired, he is in the process of transitioning out of the United States Navy. He is a U.S. Navy Explosive Ordnance Disposal Officer. I'll give you more of a background on him in a sec. I want to give you an overview of the Patriot Lunch and Bancroft Capital, one of our partners who provided a door prize, and then I'll talk about Dan Bailey and kick it off. I put together this quarterly series, this quarterly Patriot Lunch series, because I wanted to highlight a high-performing transitioning veteran, period. I wanted to bring that one guy to a broad spectrum of corporate America with the intent to break down these barriers that unfortunately exist between, transitioning military veterans and corporate leadership and corporate partners and corporate America, and to explain to the other side, as we used to say, the unique skill sets that veterans bring to the nation. Dan's going to share his special stories and his perspectives, and hopefully then learn from you and get your experience, your network, and just network with y'all. So I wanted to give you an overview of the transition from the military. It's a process. It's not easy. It's not a singular event like turning in uniforms and handing in your gear. It heavily depends on networks and building a network of relationships. So with this Patriot Lunch, it's my intent to help Dan build these relationships with y'all, with the audience, and to build them and strengthen these relationships. So after this, I'll send an email out to y'all, and with Dan on the CC, and encourage you to get to know him. He will absolutely make any organization he joins better. He brings substantial leadership experience, qualities, clarity of thought, communication, and so whatever company scoops him up is going to in the Army would call it jackpot. That he's going to win. They're going to win that way. So we have time at the end of this for some dialogue and some questions and comments. So text me or raise your hand, and we'll get you in the queue. I'd like to say highlight one of our partners, Danielle and Constellation Brands. Compliments of Constellation Brands. They've donated a special bottle of wine as a door prize to the lucky registration number. And we've got a random number generator. We're going to essentially pick that number out of a digital hat. And should your registration number be the lucky one, the lucky one that wins, the lucky winner will contact you for an address and deliver that to you. So thank you, Danielle and Constellation Brands. You guys are awesome. An overview of Bancroft Capital. Bancroft Capital is a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business that operates as an institutional broker-dealer and a small investment bank. Our mission is to train and empower transitioning military veterans and first responders to succeed in the financial services industry. And we accomplish this mission through our structured veteran training program. I'm a product and a graduate of that best-in-class program. But the way they do it is Bancroft Capital takes the proceeds of their broker-dealer business to pay for the mission. The core lines of the business are cash management, public finance, fixed income, debt and equity, capital markets, secondary trading desk, and investment banking. So I encourage our partners out there, please remember Bancroft Capital should you ever need those services, because their heart is solid gold with the mission. Now for the main event, we are pleased to welcome Commander Dan Bailey. Dan is a U.S. Navy Explosive Ordnance Disposal Officer, and he just relinquished command of, it's a unit called Mobile Unit 2 in Norfolk, Virginia. He'll get into the details of that. Dan's a graduate of the United States Naval Academy with a degree in systems engineering, and also has his Master's of Arts from the Naval Postgraduate School in Homeland Security and Defense. He's a surface warfare officer, qualified, and an EOD officer. He's got multiple deployments throughout Europe and Middle East, supporting the Army, Navy, Special Operations. He's worked on a very specialized and unique Department of State task force, which we'll talk about. And just last week, he relinquished command of this unit, this MOB Unit 2, where he was the commanding officer for the last 2 years, which is a honor and a privilege. And we're going to learn about that. He started his transition process into the civilian world. And that's where this network of our partners come in. And he plans to start his next career by the springtime. So Dan, we are really grateful for your time. Very grateful and honored, for your service and sacrifice. Really excited for this dialogue. So please kick it off with your personal introduction.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, thank you, Will, and thank you all for your time. I know there's other things going on in your own worlds, but I'd like to thank Will and for reaching out. I think this is a great opportunity for the folks at Bancroft for this time. But I will start off by telling you that I am excited to discuss with you all my community in the Navy, Special Operations. It is the smallest community in the Navy. EOD is kind of a enabler community, whereas you may think of ships, subs, and aircraft or SEALs. Well, when they get in a pinch, when there's a hung missile on a ship, it's EOD who takes care of it. When the SEALs cannot advance on an objective, or the Army Special Forces cannot advance on an objective, it's Navy EOD who clears the obstacle in terms of explosive devices or munitions discovered. I'm glad to share my perspective as a transitioning officer. I think my timeline is comfortable right now, but it's also a bit nerve-wracking. So, and Will knows exactly what I'm talking about. So, as he said, I'll finish up here in the Navy probably in July, but may look to work earlier in April, May. But I also want to take this opportunity to learn as much as I can from your side of the business and understand really what it is you may be looking for from veterans, so that I can pass that on to the folks on this side. I've got a lot of fantastic individuals in my community that I could call out by name right now who you all would be happy with. And I'd like to make sure that I convey what they're capable of during this conversation. Just to quickly run down EOD, I want to highlight what it is we do as a baseline for what this conversation is going to be. Some of the missions that EOD technicians and the EOD officers assigned complete, any unexploded munitions in whatever environment, counter IED, which was really popular in Afghanistan and Iraq, and costly. We also do chem, bio, we do radiological, and we do nuclear devices. So if you ever heard the term dirty bomb, that is a radiological device that spreads contamination, and there are means to safeguard that and remove that. And so these folks go through training for that, and it's on the high end of risk. And that's part of what I want to convey is how these folks approach that in a methodical, creative manner. And then also ordnance safety, like we talked about. Any vessels, any aircraft with hung ordnance, they come back to the carrier. It's EOD that runs out on the flight line and downloads that ordnance, safes it, and we continue mission. So a little bit about myself. I live here in Virginia Beach. My wife and my 3 kids. Will ran it all down the Naval Academy route and career in the Navy. But I'll leave you with Navy EOD technicians, and the officers assigned to them are specialists at problem solving. It's what we do day one through graduation at school. It's what we find ourselves doing in the most wild environments, and I'll tell some stories later. But that is my introduction. I think Navy EOD technicians are prime for any challenge you have. You need somebody to parachute in, these would be the types. You need somebody to dive deep and fix a problem in extreme conditions, these are the types. And it is a pleasure for me to convey how capable they are. Will.
Dan, thanks. Great intro. And for, there's a level of familiarity between Dan and I. We served together in Germany for a few years, and then quickly thereafter and studied together in Monterey. Our wives had our first kids about the same time. I think also in Monterey. And you know, just kind of going through and prepping in Germany for those you know, potentialities that we have to be ready for, you know, those, you know, dirty bombs or loose nukes, or, you know, you name it. And those are real possibilities that you have to be ready for. And Dan's guys, Dan and his team are the comfort blanket. You know, everybody just looks to those guys to be ready because they're experts, and it takes, no kidding, years and years and years to get to that level. So on to the dialogue here. So Dan, your career spans many years of intense pre-deployment training, deployments, combat operations. Is there any particular operation or event that you consider memorable that you want to that, you know, in a year or two, when you hang up your uniform and you're wearing your business shoes, you're gonna look back on and realize, hey, that was a big deal. That was something I want to remember well. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll lead by saying this story ends with insubordination to some extent. However, everybody was safe. I will share that this happened in my operational time as a young officer, where I was in Afghanistan. And to paint the picture, we were assigned to a Army company that was moving supplies from one base to another, and it involved transiting through this very steep valley. And the supplies had to be with Afghan national drivers and their vehicles. Well, we got halfway up this valley, and the vehicle, this truck that the Afghan national had, the axle snapped on it. And it was clear this vehicle, with all this fuel, was not making it any farther. So now I have an Army unit with a O2, I'm an O3 at the time, and it's not going anywhere. Sure enough, because the Taliban, in a sense, were following us for the resources, the fuel, they pulled up at the far end of the valley, and we could legitimately see a bunch of Taliban sitting in the back of a truck, well out of shot distance, however, still waiting to see what we would do. And so this truck being immobilized, I called to the fob we were heading to, and I said, hey, here's the deal. This truck is not going anywhere. We're not making repairs, and I can't carry this fuel. And the leadership there, was an 04 at the time, said, hey, you're gonna stay with that vehicle. We're not giving up any war trophies. And I tell this story because there's a tactical action to it, but there's also a leadership perspective that has always stuck with me. So what happened is, the Army at the time was like, hey, we're staying. And I didn't really consider it too safe. And so I looked at my chief and I said, I need options. And the chief was like, well, you could listen and we could stay put and protect ourselves all night, or we could do something else. And I said, I like something else. And so something else turned out being building up a big block of 4, 5, 6 blocks of C4. And I said, I'm going to blow this truck up, and we're going, and then we're leaving. We're not going to let them have the fuel. We obviously can't move it. So, and I said, I'm going to be the one to take it down there. So imagine that there's an end of a valley, there's a top of a valley, there's a truck in the middle, and there's us. And so my chief gave me the demo. I walked down there. Again, I was kind of out of shot range, but, you know, thankfully nothing bad happened. Placed the demo on this truck. And I, you know, obviously before I had the conversation with the leadership, I said, I can't stay put. This is not going to happen. You know, I'm going to get rid of this. I will see you soon. They were adamant that we should stay put. And, you know, I said, we're going to do something else, because I had my team and I had about 15 other young Army individuals that clearly weren't ready to camp for the night. And I felt that they were in danger. All it takes is one notification and you're going to have more Taliban you can deal with. So I walked down there. Actually, I sprinted out of sight, put this bang on this truck, and it went off. And the whole front of this cab flew off. And then the ICOM chatter, which is the mechanism the Taliban use to communicate, said, was that you? Was that me? Did we put something out there? And they quickly realized we had done something ourselves. Well, the problem was the fuel container had not burst. So there was still adequate fuel. And I told the young Lance Corporal, the young Army private in the turret, I said, put a tracer round in that fuel and let's go. And sure enough, 2 or 3 rounds came out. Then the tracer came out. It was a fantastic explosion. One I wish I had video of. But we got the job done in terms of they're not getting the fuel. We obviously can't keep it, and we're moving on. Sure enough, we pull up to the base, which is only 2 miles away. And as I walk into the JOC, they're waiting with the phone, and it's the major who wants to yell at me. And I tell this story because I took it on the chin. Those 18 plus people were safe and they got home that night. But you know, that leader was only agitated for about 30 minutes until his superiors realized that, hey, this was the better call. And even though I enjoyed it in terms of running down and putting some demo somewhere, it really forced me to grow up as a young officer and say, the better call is this. We are not well protected here, and we got to get the heck out of here. Nobody's coming to save us, and we're not ready for the night. So it is memorable to me because I got some action time, but I also made a leadership decision, told the Army we were leaving. And remember, I'm not in a tactical control position, but I was a senior officer at the time. And that always sticks with me because I can only imagine what would have happened if we would have stayed for the night. You know, we had one to kind of transit through. So it reeks of insubordination. At the same time, it reeks of judgment. And I tell that story to my officers. I tell it to my chief's mess because, you know, I'm still here. I wasn't court-martialed. Everybody was safe that night. So that's what I got.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's amazing. And the stories that you gave, I don't know how many guys you said there, 18-ish, you know, the lesson you learned, you know, that they learned that at an amplified level.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. I know, phenomenal experience. I know your time there, you know, was truly a sacrifice, and thank you for that. Let's move to your time at Department of State. For the audience there, you know, Dan served on a very unique task force, global in reach, pretty important, and it's called a Man-PAD task force, Man Portable Air Defense Task Force. Talk to us through that, about why that's so important, what your key takeaways are for the audience, you know, for working there, and how that would help you in the corporate environment.
Perfect. Yeah. So one of my favorite tours in the Navy, as a detailee within the State Department, I show up and my tasking is to be the EOD technical expert for the State Department, the same department and division that runs NGO funding for demining worldwide. I've also had dual-hatted as the DoD interagency lead for the Man-PADS task force. So interagency, which brings a lot of power, brings a lot of money to make an effect. So aside from being the technical expert and reviewing NGO incidents and accidents and saying, hey, this is dangerous, they should tighten up their procedures. Maybe
non-governmental organizations. So,
yeah, so having incidents happen, again, this time was Syria and the rebuilding in Syria, there were some practices that needed to be fixed. And I felt compelled to say, hey, we're giving these folks a lot of money. They need to tighten up practices and safeguard these, quite honestly, inexperienced UXOD miners. So that's one side of the business. The other side was the Man-PADS task force, where the tasking was to identify at-risk Man-PADS globally in order to pursue their destruction so that we could exchange and further compensate countries. If you want to take Romania, for example, which was a success case, this was an opportunity. And the lesson I took away from this was push in and build relationships and then work at those relationships. From what amounted to a cold call to the defense attaché in Romania, to destruction in Romania, to transferring value to Romania, was the story of my tour. And I had this with 10 other countries, but they were the first to get all the way through the process. And you know, I regret that as a detailee, I ran out of time to make more deals. But the emphasis was call these embassies, tell them why it's right that they arrange with the host nation to destroy these at-risk weapons, which can easily, even in the most, in the earliest versions of SA-7s, can shoot down today's most complex airliners. Get rid of these weapons, secure the skies, and support the National Security Council Aviation Treaty, or Threat Reduction Plan, I'm sorry. So I said, okay, call these embassies. Hey, here's who I am. I've got this offer. I'd like to come out and make it. And I loved this job because I was able to prepare a plan. Next thing I know, I'm at the table with the ambassador. I say, ma'am, sir, this is why this is right. I know through intel channels that this country has X number of weapons, and I'm going to go for them. If that was successful, I found myself in ordnance depots. I found myself in hidden facilities to look at things and say, let's get rid of these. Let me exchange funding so that you can better secure what you have left. And as the ordnance expert, I brought all kinds of credibility to the transaction. And what I loved about it was there was no stop sign. I could take this as far as I wanted to go. I was in the Middle East. I was in Eastern Europe. There are SA-7s everywhere that need to go away. And I always tell this story to friends here because there was one country that had a bunch of them, and this would have been a massive deal. But geopolitics got in my way at the end. And so I went and told the generals, and I said, hey, the host nation generals, I said, hey, these got to go. These are poorly secured. These are essentially rotting weapons, you know, like they're not going to work. They're old. You haven't tested them. And so he said, no, we keep them. And I said, no, we're going to get rid of them. And I'm going to make a better deal for you. I'm going to build you a facility. I'm going to put locks on. I'm going to put CCTV so that you can better secure what you have and reduce the threat from theft. They said, no, we're going to keep them. And I said, no, I'm going to come back. And so my strategy involved was getting a missile scientist, getting an engineer, getting a physician to tell the general and bring them back with me to this country to tell the general that these missiles are more of a danger to your people than they are to aircraft because they are not going to launch. And even with all that information, the test kits, the engineering, and the doctors, they still said they would keep them. And I said, no, I'm coming back. And money talks in many cases. In this case, money did talk and got me a third sit down. However, like I said, geopolitics got in my way, and the leadership in the country had reorganized all the military. So all my relationships had gone bust. And I found that deflating, but at the same time, I take stock in like how far I came. And with my team at the State Department to be like, hey, this is not a loss. This is progress. Like this is going to happen in the future. We have set the seeds for this to be successful. You know, it's a noble cause. Get rid of these weapons, safeguard airliners. I mean, this is 200, 300 people at a time. And they've been used in the past, and hopefully they won't be used in the future. But my takeaway was, you know, the ability to push in, establish relationships, build those relationships, and make it worthwhile.
Yeah. So this is like like kind of an Alex Trebek Jeopardy question. Like, you know, Dan Bailey, State Department, Manpass Task Force. What is the combination of an international arms dealer, a broker, and government repos? You were literally repossessing, you know, weapons and extremely dangerous missiles off the streets of Romania, and so, but the takeaway for the audience, from what I'm hearing, is like you said, relationships, communication, kind of going where no one has gone before, because if somebody had gone there before, it'd been done already. Yep. You know, they don't give you something easy to do. They give you something hard to do because they need it done, and they need it done right and well, and that's you. There's a lot of applicability of that in the corporate world. Just those functions of just pulling in, pulling stuff off the street. I mean, pulling, cash off the street, right? There are financial transactions that happen daily, over and over and over, and there are people, registered agents, that broker these deals, and it's fun. So that sounds like a really neat opportunity, and thanks for sharing with that. Hey, let's talk about kind of follow on with MOB Unit 2, and really talk about the specialized unit, your battalion level command that you just handed over last week. Yeah. What are your top 1 or 2, 3 takeaways from that event, and how has that prepared you for this next season of life and in corporate America?
Yeah, so becoming the commanding officer of that unit, obviously the pinnacle, it's what I strive for. We found success, and I'm ever thankful for it. The change of command was a special time, I mean, of course, personally, but the value was in saying, hey, to my successor, here is a outstanding unit, keep running with them, and the crew shifts and they carry on. But I'll tell you, some of the things that I learned, being the CO, was that I was very far away from the tactical stuff that I was trained to in my first days in the community. I can't tell you that I became a better bomb technician because I was a CO, but I will tell you that I became a better leader because I was challenged to become a more receptive individual, a more empathetic individual. And that's not soft in any way. But what it is a focus on half the things I talk about in my office with my leaders have nothing to do with the OD. They have to do with people, the growth of those people, and wielding my influence, my limited influence in the Navy, to ensure that those people get a great jump start on something. Maybe they recover better, or, maybe I just improve their lives, whether it's for their families or not. And I tell the story that one week I spent the majority of my week dealing with a sailor who wife had a newborn that was several weeks early. This was a tiny baby. And the JO was in my office giving me the information. And I said, okay, I got the story. What are you up to? What are you going to do about it? And he's talking about going back to training, and we'll just get this sailor back on the team when he's ready. I said, no, I don't think so, John. I think what we need to focus on is how can we improve this sailor's life? So let's break it down and talk about where this sailor physically is and what he's actually going through. Well, it turns out that, we got the sailor to kind of own up to the fact that he's getting depressed because he never knew how to handle the situation. I said, John, well, how do we fix that? And John's like, I don't know. And I said, well, why don't you get one of his buddies to go out there to accompany him and see him through, give him somebody else to talk to. Okay, cool. We'll make that happen. And I petitioned for the funds to make that happen. That gets done. I said, okay, what else is next? And we talk about, the baby being very premature and the wife being a bit unstable with it and being away from home. And I said, well, hey, let's get that sailor assigned their temporary duty so he doesn't incur any costs. Done. Make it happen. What else? And I think they got the sense that every time I asked what else, they realized that you could go a little farther to help somebody. And that's what I wanted to impress upon them, was that the leadership is about, in a sense, taking care of folks with your eye on the mission. And so we went so far as to set up telehealth to get embedded mental health to speak with the wife, with the husband, so that they could collectively make it through this. And I felt proud of that because I think they're much better off for it. And their experience in the Navy, they'll never forget. And, they'll probably never leave because that was above and beyond for them. And I tell that story not because I think we're all great, but I think that there is a way to wield influence to make it happen. We even went so far as to contact the Naval Special Operations Foundation and said, hey, what can you do? And they turned up $500 in DoorDash gift cards just because we asked. Think about how the impact is on that sailor's family. Now that they've got mental health, they're not paying out of pocket. They've got food on the way. They got, a friend in need, a friend right there to help them out. So I think when I bring all that back together, I say in command, my objective was to do as much as I could. And granted, the Navy is a large organization. I can't really turn the wheel that much. But when it comes to my 160 people, I can turn it a heck of a ways to make sure that that one person is going to come back wanting to work, eager to work, and ready to support the organization that supported them. So that's what I mean by, taking care of folks.
Yeah, that's great.
There's a couple.
Dan, you have. Yeah, I'm sorry. Your point. I'm just going to say that wielding the power of the influence of your network to make a positive impact on your sailor and his family's lives. Yeah. Bought a career of service to of their service to the nation. Yeah. So very, very quickly, very easily for the audience, if Dan had, and if his junior officer had handled that, I guess less professionally or less, lesser degree, and Dan, was gone or not present or, didn't, care to, to do that, then that guy would have probably not enlisted. He would have moved on, and, no harm, no foul there. But it would not have been great. Now that guy is probably going to re-enlist. His family's going to be happier. They're going to have their baby's going to be healthier. Their relationships are healthier. So a lot of really good first, second, third order effects of just positive leadership decisions. And these are the values that veterans can bring into a corporate organization. Over you, Dan.
There's a story I also wanted to tell about. And this is selfishly, I like to be empowered. Okay. No lies about that. I like to be empowered. I like to move out. I took that into my command as well. And I empowered these officers, not to make the decision that I would make, but to understand my perspective and then go out there and make their own decisions. Big on judgment. I want to evaluate your judgment. I want you to learn. If you make a mistake, I got it. We'll work it out. And I was really proud of this one officer because he ended up being in South America for a EOD exercise, and there was demolition involved. There was shooting. He ended up starting a forest fire, and embassy involvement, fleet involvement, Southcom involvement. Southcom is the overall leading flag admiral in this case, who runs the whole region for the Navy. And I was just terribly impressed with the officer, the way, he reported to me, the way he talked to the SCO at the embassy, the way he talked to the defense attaché, and put this whole thing to bed. This was accidental, but at the same time, the country didn't have the right precautions in place, but you could see how it would be received, and it could be chaotic. But at the same time, the officer was very tempered and addressed the issue, had his safeguards in place. And I didn't lose much sleep, though, even though there was a forest fire going in Brazil. I was very proud of the officer. I thought he handled himself well. I thought he represented my command well. And that's what I told him. I said, hey, look, I'm temporary here, but this emblem over here is going to be here forever. And you've got to represent this flag regardless of who's the boss. So, we'll do our part while we're here. But empowerment, if you connect, will bring you tremendous results. And this was a case in point.
Yeah, wonderful. Right. Mission first, team always. They say in the Army, they always got like a neat motto for everything. Yeah. So hey, we're at the point where we're going to chum the water to the audience. If there is any questions or dialogue that the registrations that the audience wants to ask, raise your Zoom hand. You can chat it. You can verbalize it. Doesn't matter to me. It's if you wanted to ask Dan anything about his command, his career, his future. There are a lot of takeaways I'm collecting here. I'll highlight them at the end. And while we're waiting on some of those questions to come in, Dan, briefly, I think we have a hand raised.
I was looking at some of the chat.
Somebody raise a hand?
Yeah, I'll pipe in there. Dan, can you share with the group some of the bigger challenges you think service members face as they transition from the military careers to civilian careers? Certainly some of what you're facing, but some of what you see some of your peers, and maybe some suggestions from your side of the table as still an active service member, what can be done to bridge some of those gaps of well-meaning civilian counterparties and service members who are in need of their support.
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of the challenges, right off the bat, transition equals change. And change to me might be about your comfort zone, whether you having one boss and you're good at the end of the day with one boss, or whether you're an expert with 6 people or 60, that could be a transition. I think that could be a challenge. So I would recommend that potential employers assess their veterans that they're looking at and say, hey, what is your comfort zone? Like, what is, it's a hard thing to say, but like, what is the extent of your comfort? And if running 1,000 people, divided up into 8 teams of whoever, like if that's not in your zone, I think employers should work to understand that. Again, you're going to assess the caliber of the veteran, but comfort zone is one big thing, because if veterans don't identify it themselves and employers don't nail it, I don't think it's going to be quite a healthy relationship. I think, there's an adjustment that takes place. Most veterans are, hey, I'll be at the base and I'll work, Monday through Friday, and this is that. And in corporate America, I would presume that there would be some flexibility there where, your Saturdays and Sundays may not be available should the team need them. So I think, again, employers should be aware of the expectation of hours, not that, late hours are a problem, but on the surface, I think it's okay to assess that, somebody is coming from this regiment for 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, whatever, still from this regiment and going into a new work regiment. And there could be some growing pains. And these are all fair questions. I would love to be asked these questions. I'll say, well, this was my routine. This is how I like to work. You might discover that a veteran doesn't like the military routine and would like to be a little more flexible in the routine. I think you also have to look and understand if a veteran, has determined what their goals are going to be. And both are fine, but I'll tell you that a lot of veterans, folks I know right now who are thinking about getting out, folks I know have gotten out and have hopped for a little bit, are still trying to determine what their goals are. If they, if the compensation is adequate, if the travel is adequate, then maybe they do that job. Or, I think I align more to where I'm coming out and I'm looking for a path to progress. I'm looking at a path to influence and grow within a company. Fair to ask if a veteran is career focused or if they are content with retirement. And some may be in different situations. But if you asked me, I would say I'm looking for a path and I want to help this company grow. And I want to do that job, then that job. And I want to see how far we can take this. Those are my thoughts on veterans and interacting with players.
Great. Dan, great point there. I think you might have kind of rolled up that your answer there into this next question, which was from one of our audience members. What is the most helpful benefit or service a company can offer to the transitioning veteran? From what I heard you say, it would be a pathway to empower them. It's a pathway to where they want to go with their career, be it kind of stationary. I'm good with knocking this out, a growth. And anything else that you want to add to that? So the question very briefly, helpful benefit or service, what's the most helpful benefit or service a company can provide to a veteran?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a benefit or a service, but I think a company can advertise an attractive vision. You're going to need a vision to get behind. If the history of the company is that vision changes every year or two, that's going to be difficult for a veteran, because a veteran has been aligned to the Department of Defense for 10 to 20 plus years, and they understand where we're going. So I think vision is an aspect of employment that must be clear to a veteran, and it must be attractive to a veteran, I guess. But I think the other thing is, some veterans are not as fortunate as others, meaning that they have incurred injuries. They have potentially lost limbs. They may not sleep as well as others. They may be plagued with PTSD or TBI from explosions or exposure to any number of things. And I would, if I had a bunch of companies in front of me, I would say, hey, there is some due consideration for the impact that this has had on the veteran. However, most veterans want to be treated like everybody else. But in the case where there are limitations, I would think that some consideration should be obvious.
Yeah, those are great points. Just the consideration of where that, where he's coming from. I'd also say for the audience, sometimes, there's so many myths out there for veterans, that they're, I mean, we can go forever and ever and ever on the PTSD thing or the TBI thing, and the myths out there are myths because people haven't ever really talked to them about it. So I think for that, one of the benefit or the service that a company can provide a veteran is just have a conversation, just talk, because he may not have ever talked, he or she may not have ever talked about it, or just ask the question, do you need any special, accommodation for X, Y, or Z? What do you think about this or that? And just have that conversation. That really shows, meeting that shows the effort to meet that veteran in the middle. We're approaching the end of our time here, and I hate it because it always seems to go just kind of wicked fast. We've talked about a lot of really great things, a lot of good questions, a lot of good points and lessons you share with us, Dan. Really appreciate it. I wanted to be very clear that our sponsor for this event, Constellation Brands, it's not necessarily provided a bottle of wine to the lucky registration winner. It is the beverage of their choice. So if you're a Tanqueray guy or a brandy or whiskey, so that really opens it up a lot. So that was a happy text I got at the beginning of this. Yeah, right. So I don't know if I could, maybe that goes to the host, probably not. It probably goes to the audience somewhere. And so please feel free to reach out to Dan. His email is DanielAndrewBailey@gmail.com. No funny business there. Normal spellings, Daniel Andrew Bailey, and I'll put that in an email in the follow-up after this. Dan, on behalf of Bancroft Capital and corporate America, our partners and our audience, that have given up their Patriot lunch time to listen to you. Thank you for your service. Thank you, Dan, for your sacrifice. Thanks for your family. Kind of letting you do this for the last 20 years. We wish you the best of luck on your transition. You're going to crush it. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that there will be a bunch of companies in front of you. And the hard part is for you to help, kind of narrow all that down to what is going to best fulfill you in your next season. To our friends in the audience, we hope this Patriot Lunch has provided you an opportunity to enjoy a small group dialogue, to learn about Dan and the Navy explosive ordnance disposal field, and really just veterans in general, how much service and sacrifice it takes for them to willingly go to a combat zone and stare at Taliban from a long way away through binoculars, and they have very freely chosen to fight for and defend our freedom and our way of life. And Dan, thank you for that.
Thank you, Will. I'll close as well with many thanks to again everybody's time. I know it's very valuable to Bancroft, and certainly Will. Your friendship and communication with me has been fantastic in and out of the military. But for those on the call still, I will just reiterate that Navy EOD is a special operations community. There are countless talented individuals there, enlisted, junior, senior, officer, junior, senior, that have a mindset that, we are a jack of all trades, master of none. And I thought that was wrong my entire career. We are a jack of all trades, and we are trying to be a master of everything. And I don't care if you don't know how to take care of that nuclear weapon, but you might be a great diver, a great jumper, a great shooter, a great leader. You're still worried about how to take care of that nuclear weapon, and you're getting better at it. It is a mindset that we have. It's been a pleasure to lead and to serve. And I'll just close with, something very commonplace. People don't remember what you say, but they remember how you make them feel. And, as a leader, I felt like that was more of my role as a CO, that, nobody was asking me to go diving. Nobody wanted me in their stick for jumping. But man, they needed me to reassure them that this was the right direction. This was the best strategy for the command. And I have faith and confidence that you guys will all do well. They need to hear that from the boss. And, much like my job at the State Department was short, relative 2 years, my CO tour was short, 2 years. And I'll miss it, but I'll never forget what I learned there. And I thank you all again for your time.
Got it, Dan. There's a whole lot of life ahead of you, making good things happen for a great company. And so I'm excited for you. We're here for you. This audience is here for you. Audience, thank you for your time and attention. We're going to send out an email shortly for the next quarterly Patriot Lunch. Mark your calendars, February 9th, Thursday, February 9th. Feel free to forward that invite out. And also this link out once you get it here in a few days. Share it with your network. Grow this. This is important stuff. Share the good news of these accomplished veterans who are entering your workforce. Hope you had a great day, and I hope you have a great holiday season. Looking forward to seeing you all in February. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Bill.